I have an idea. Let us improve upon the Emperor's perfection. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time that High Marshal Helbrecht had an upgrade. He's been sitting at nearly complete for a while, and recent events have led me to make some slight changes and upgrades. So we'll be moving from the bottom to the top on old Helbrecht and picking out a few key points. This is a good example. Oftentimes I'm giving people feedback, and every bit of feedback I have to offer involves spending more time. But I like to say that the further you go into your highlights, the smaller they become. So you are painting less and less, yet improving the model greatly. You have already walked 9 miles, so just go one more to make it an even 10. Let's get into it. Here we have Helbrecht in the middle of an upgrade. So first of all, look at the landscape. By changing the color of this to more of a Martian sand, but changing it to a warmer, lighter tone, the darker figures would be so much more prominent. So I'm creating this color with a mixture of molten lava and oak brown. And we'll just give everything an all-over coating to try to stay in the lines. While that mixture is in a somewhat sticky state, I'll pull in some pure molten lava. Just add a little bit of dimension. You can see wherever things are mounded up or kind of sitting in a flat, plain, open space. Just give that a wet blended lift. Apply the same to the stones here. Might need to refresh the mixture a little bit, but it's important to have that foundational base coat in place. I am changing the color completely after all. Alright, with that fully dry, let's do some overbrushing. Just taking a mixture of molten lava and oak brown again, a little more heavily on the molten lava side. Doing a little bit of overbrushing. You can see I'm just lightly dragging the brush along to catch some of the larger textures. To top that off, I'll add a little bit of glowing Inferno into the previous mix. And again, just trying to add to the dimension, picking out the small hills, some of these open areas. I don't want to completely cover it though. Add a little bit of spotlighting and dramatic highlighting to the situation. Alright, an instant difference. I love the switch in contrast. Now moving along to some of the other key areas, let's take some Turquoise Siren, start lining out a little bit more of this power weapon effect. I think I can intensify it. It's a little on the subtle side originally, but adding some more saturation, bringing things up around this power node, we'll call it. Just trying to press very lightly, but drawing the fine web-like lines, almost like shattered glass. I want to add a little bit more to the overall bluish nature of the blade as well, so just taking some diluted Imperial Navy, glazing it over these darker areas. Yeah, I think it'll do well over those wispy lines. Blending things together, filtering them down. And then adding some very small amounts of Aqua Alchemy, trying to pick out wherever there's an intersection in these wispy little lines or when they run over the fuller of the blade. Just a nice light touch will give you a very fine line. For the final touch, just a small amount of white and a small amount of Aqua Alchemy. You can tell I'm trying to do my best because I'm talking very slowly. You can see it brings everything together. It's picking out these very small final portions within the lightning. Not too shabby. Moving right along, let's address the armor. Yeah, I think I just needed to take a little more time, a little bit of a closer look. I tend to breeze over true metallic metals a lot of the time. So I've taken some greedy gold and some mithril mixed together. I'm just attending to those kind of brighter highlights, any of these specular highlights. You can see some areas that just needed some fortifying. You know, it's just kind of a quality of finish issue. Needs more paint, needs more pigment. So just soaking that mixture in place is pulling everything together nicely. Nice, nice. I'm navigating Helbrecht. A few more items to tune up. See these wee tiny candle wicks. Hit those with a little bit of that molten lava, glowing Inferno. I like what that, funny enough, it's just such a small touch of warmth, but good color communication. Next, all of the parchment. I have some diluted white on my brush. Go in there with a very small amount. Should still show through some of what I'm painting over. But just adding to the sharpness, a little bit more brightness being present on the model. It kind of was murky before. It lacked, needed some punching up in certain areas. But pulling up the parchments with a little bit of white, that'll knock it up nicely. And I thought the same with the cloaks, so I just brought a little bit of ash gray into the situation. Just like with the parchments and purity seals, it's a very fine amount. Pulling things up out of the great amount of depth and midtone that was present before. And in the case of the chest and the collarbone area, I'm going much more broad, of course. I want that kind of general elevation as the eyes travel upwards on the model. The light becomes more intense, becomes a little brighter. Of course, I'll give the same treatment to his black cloak and any of these mid-gray Templar symbols. When you're working with white, it's always a case of nothing but off-whites until you get to that final white. So that's the case here with this Templar symbol and field on the shoulder pad. Oh yes, the skulls as well. Every bit of bone. This is nice and simple. Just go through and add some final dots of white. It makes all the difference. Not taking me too much time. Just leaning into that zenithal highlight, kind of cocking everything off to the model's left side ever so slightly. You can see it's all about portion control, you know, a very, very small highlighted area on the skull, letting everything else around it breathe. Coming right along, a little Runic Cobalt. Bring up these boiler suits that the servitors are wearing. Just a little jump up there as well. It's kind of a common theme. Of course, the answer to most upgrades is more paint, a little brighter, a little darker, but it is working. I like that there's an entire model attached just to carry the gun. What a status symbol. Let's lift that up ever so slightly. First with Angelic Red, and then Angelic Red with a small amount of white, which will give me this salmon-esque highlight. Just picking out the very fine corners, all of the rivets, wherever anything kind of changes direction along the edge. Now, in the case of the dead orc, I think it's lacking in midtone. I want to go and fortify that by just adding more layers of camouflage green. I want to be careful to not cover up that highlight tone. I can't quite remember what the mixture was. If I was trying to match that, I would throw some space dust into this camouflage green. But yeah, you can see the difference. It's adding a little bit more these subtleties in midtone, so things aren't quite as abrupt. There's certain areas that are a little more flat in their facing, a little more broad, a little more mid-tone. Yeah, the cleavage as well, that little center line down the chest, most notably, has been picked out. You know, the light is going to hit the bottom of that at a certain point. It's going to be a very fine line, but it still is, you know, showing directly down into the center of the model's chest. Finally, finish off the ground below the coating rust orange. This is some weathering powder from the now defunct Secret Weapon miniatures, RIP. Just place a small amount. There are various weathering powders on the market. This one is mine, but they're all quite adequate. It's pretty much ground up chalk. I'm working it around with a brush that I cut to be flattened on the tip. Just adding some atmospheric dust. I like the variety of texture that it brings into play. Just make sure that I have a decent amount kicked up on the boots, you know, the areas that would be dragging along the ground and kicking up dust. Looking good, Helbrecht. Much improved, most Helbrecht. Thank you for watching along as I made some changes to Helbrecht. He'll be drop potting his way to a new home very soon. Thank you for your support on Patreon at the Castellan tier, Mr. Crowley. And a big thank you to everyone supporting me here on Patreon. Please feel free to leave comments or ask questions down below. I'm always happy to hear from you and improve. So, until the next time we meet again, my friends, on down that chromatic trail, remain unchained.